Thanks for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a troublesome recipe for marital bliss for some. A split between the sexes already fires up trouble in Kenyan parliament as lawmakers pass a bill proposing to allow men to marry as many women as they want. Also, Madagascar's new and democratically elected president is in Paris on a charm offensive, trying to drum up international aid and investment. This 5 years after it was cut off following a coup in 2009. And rights groups are pressuring the Senegalese government to do more to protect vulnerable young boys forced out onto the streets to beg by the Quranic schools looking after them. First up, forget better halves. Kenyan men now have a shot at signing up for better thirds or even better quarters. Female members of parliament walked out on Friday after male lawmakers voted to pass a bill allowing men to marry as many women as they want. The proposals sparked fierce debate in the House and also drops a clause that would have given wives the right to veto a husband's choice. Women are also stuck with just the one husband. In Kenya, as in many parts of Africa, polygamy is a custom amongst traditional communities. Some critics of the bill, though, say Parliament has its priorities wrong. Duncan Woodside's in Nairobi for us. He tells us more.
Obviously, there are huge amounts of income inequality across the country. There's a crime wave sweeping Nairobi, and there's the issue of Islamic extremism as well. Just in the last few days, a vehicle was impounded from Islamic extremists in the coastal city of Mombasa. Little did the police realise for at least a week that that vehicle parked outside their HQ was packed with explosives. But no, obviously the Kenyan Parliament at the moment views this family bill as being more significant, and in particular the people who are present, the MPs who were present in the House last night, saw it more important to introduce this clause which allows men to marry, not just marry more than one woman, but not to seek consent from their first wife in order to marry a second or third wife. Now, I've been out and about in Nairobi this evening, going between different bars and restaurants. Here's what people had to say about that.
I think polygamy in any society is not good. Once you've committed to somebody, I think that should be it.
We need to appreciate that this is Africa, right? Polygamy is not absolutely new. Cultural laws and the Constitution provides for the right to enjoy your culture.
I think our male members of parliament need to think beyond themselves and beyond this generation of theirs. I think they should look towards future generations of Kenyans.
So, Duncan, some very mixed feelings there, but generally it doesn't seem to have gone down very well.
No, overall, obviously, within Nairobi itself, which is progressive, a very modern city, lots of young women on the up career-wise, and also young men on the up career-wise. The feeling is, at least among the people I've spoken to, that this is a retroactive step. Effectively, it's pandering to older interests within the country, traditional interests, effectively, and cementing an impression that Kenya's society is perhaps rather overly male-dominated. But if you were to go to the countryside and talk to people in the shambas, then obviously you'd get a very different view. People there tending to prefer the traditional options, including polygamy. So it varies as to where you are in Kenya, and there is this big tension at the moment, I think, between older and younger generations, and in particular urban and rural populations.
Duncan Woodside there for us. Now, Madagascar's new president was in Paris on Friday on a charm offensive, trying to attract aid and investment that was cut off by a coup 5 years ago. Since HERI RAJAONARIMAMPIANINA was voted in democratically in December, Madagascar's economic isolation has already shown signs of thawing, with the International Monetary Fund once again recognising the government and restoring ties.
After 5 years of political crisis, Madagascar is in ruins, in desperate need of roads, bridges, dams, schools. The return to democracy last December has meant a return of foreign aid. And with the IMF now back on board, there's hopes that the nation's battered economy will slowly recover. But aid or no aid, many are skeptical. Some say even before the coup in 2009, it never trickled down.
We've always had aid, but unfortunately it doesn't reach the people. It's often pocketed by those in government.
Analysts also say it's worth Madagascar's while to look at new sources of aid.
The IMF will give financial aid, but with a lot of draconian conditions attached to it. So the Malagasy government should be extremely careful in negotiating this aid and realize that beyond the IMF, there are other aid donors like China, which has a lot of reserves and is able to invest in Africa.
As the country tries to get the ball rolling, newly elected President HERI RAJAONARIMAMPIANINA met with French business leaders in Paris on Friday to try to drum up investment.
Investment depends on confidence in the authority of the state. We'll be putting in place a state of law. Everyone must be made aware that our country has laws and everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. There will be no impunity.
Madagascar is also firming up international ties. The African Union has lifted sanctions, and the EU is set to do the same as soon as the Prime Minister is chosen. The President says he has big plans for change and is determined to boost growth by plowing investment into agriculture, mining, and tourism.
France's president urged EU nations to step up to a commitment to provide 500 troops to help the MISCA and Sangar's operations already on the ground to stem violence in Central African Republic. EU personnel numbers are currently stuck at 375. Many Eastern European countries who'd been keen to contribute have had second thoughts since the outbreak of crisis in Ukraine. Brutal violence erupted in Central African Republic after a military coup last year. The UN's human rights chief has warned that the state is pretty much non-existent and that the level of communal violence is terrifying.
This has become a country where people are not just killed, they are tortured, mutilated, burned, and dismembered, sometimes by spontaneous mobs, as well as by organized groups of armed fighters. MISCA, the Sangaris, and humanitarian agencies are grappling with enormous problems, as well as with terrible dilemmas, such as choosing between unwillingly aiding the cleansing of trapped Muslim populations or leaving them against their will in places where they are in real danger of being slaughtered.
In Ivory Coast, there's been criticism of the decision yesterday to hand over a former youth minister, Charles Blé Goudet, to the International Criminal Court to face crimes against humanity charges. Now, Blé Goudet was subject to an ICC arrest warrant over post-electoral violence in which around 3,000 people were killed in 2010. He also faced war crimes charges in Ivory Coast, where he's currently jailed. Abidjan agreed to deliver Blé Goudet to The Hague, whilst Simone Gbagbo, wife of jailed former President Laurent Gbagbo, is also accused of human rights abuses by the ICC, but remains in Ivory Coast. Members of their opposition IPF party says the inconsistency is divisive.
This is not a decision that will ease tensions. It does not give the impression that the country is, if I may say, advancing on the path to normalization, to a way out of this conflict.
Rights groups this week slammed the Senegalese government for doing little to stop young boys being forced to beg on the streets by Quranic schools. Some of the children are beaten, barely clothed, and live in squalid, cramped conditions. The problem is with a minority of institutions, but Human Rights Watch reckons that forced juvenile begging is an industry worth millions of euros a year.
1 year after a fire killed 8 children between the ages of 7 and 12 years of age in a Quranic school in the Medina district of Dakar, the Senegalese government pledges to regulate the Quranic school system. Thousands of boys are entrusted to Quranic teachers by their families, who are too poor to feed them. Many of the children, who are called talibés, are treated well, but others are forced to beg on the streets. Human Rights Watch criticizes the Senegalese government for not prosecuting renegade Quranic teachers and not regulating schools.
There are tens of thousands of children who are forced to beg in the streets for 6 or 7 hours every day. They are forced to hand over huge sums of money, rice and sugar. The state must assume its responsibility and see that the law is respected.
1 year after the deaths of the 8 children, a 53-page report and 5-minute video made by Human Rights Watch describes the abuses on the part of Quranic teachers.
There has been a law since 2005 making it illegal to force people to beg. The state lacks the determination to enforce this law to make sure it is respected by those who exploit and abuse these children.
According to recent estimations, Quranic schools force 30,000 children to beg on the streets of Dakar alone. Many of these children come from Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, the Gambia and Mali.
In Mali, a blaze at the main market in Bamako has devastated the landmark, gutting around 2,000 shops and racking up millions of euros in damage. Luckily, no one was injured in the blaze at the Marché Rose. Authorities say they still don't know what started the fire. Market vendors, though, have speculated that a short circuit may have been to blame. That's pretty much it from me. But before we go, a year after French troops helped turn around an Islamist invasion in northern Mali, and the country is still on its way to finding equilibrium. Tens of thousands of people who fled the violence remain in refugee camps in neighbouring countries. Well, amongst those hoping to tempt them back are Mali's famous musicians. We can catch our correspondent's full-length report on this tomorrow at 7:10 p.m. Paris time. But for now, a quick taster and bye from me. Take care.
A caravan of musicians on the move to promote peace for Mali. Musicians from the north and the south of the country have come together to deliver a message of reconciliation to thousands of Malians living in refugee camps after fleeing their homeland.
We're black, white, Songhai, Bambara, Tamashek, Arab. We're all here for peace and against war.